When people think of Nazi superweapons, they often imagine the monstrous Rate tank or the infamous V-2 rockets. But few know that Hitler and his naval command envisioned something even more extreme. A class of super battleships so massive, so fuel-hungry, and so mechanically unrealistic that they would have been more dangerous to their own crew than to the enemy. These were the H-Class battleships, culminating in the insane H-44, a ship so enormous that German architects warned it might literally break its own hull or sink itself under its own weight. This is the forgotten story of the Nazi super warship so gigantic it could never exist, and the bizarre reasons Germany spent years trying to design a ship they physically could never build. To understand the madness behind the H-Class, you first have to understand the mindset within Hitler's Navy in the late 1930s. International treaties limited Germany's battleships to 35,000 tons, a size comparable to American and British ships of the era. But Germany secretly ignored these limits almost immediately. The Bismarck, which they claimed followed the treaty, weighed 50,000 tons fully loaded. German naval leadership saw this as a success. They got away with cheating once.
So why not cheat bigger? In 1939, before the war even began, the Kriegsmarine drafted the notorious Plan Z, a 10-year naval expansion program intended to rival the British Royal Navy. And at its center were the proposed giants, the H-Class Super Battleships. Vessels so incredible on paper that even Nazi propaganda didn't know how to present them to the public. The initial model, the H-39, already dwarfed the Bismarck. At over 56,000 tons, it would have carried massive 40.6-centimeter guns, naval artillery capable of firing shells the size of small cars. 6 ships were ordered. Construction even began on 2 hulls before the war started. But as the designs evolved, so did the insanity. The plan didn't stop with H-39. Engineers soon proposed H-41 and H-42, each larger than the last. But then they reached the final stage, the H-44, a super battleship of such absurd proportions that it remains one of the craziest naval designs of the 20th century. The H-44 would have been nearly 345 meters long, longer than most modern aircraft carriers. It would have weighed 131,000 tons, over twice the size of the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built. Its side armor would have been 350 millimeters thick. It required engines powerful enough to move a floating steel mountain through the ocean, engines Germany simply didn't have.
And its primary cannons, 50.8-centimeter naval guns, would have fired shells weighing more than 2 tons each. This wasn't a warship, it was a floating skyscraper. But the deeper engineers studied the design, the more nightmarish it became. The first problem was structural. You cannot simply scale a ship upward infinitely. When you double the length of a ship, its weight increases by a factor of 8. The ocean pushes back, steel bends, hulls twist. The H-44 would have been so heavy that normal waves, the kind you see on any ocean, could distort its frame and cause catastrophic cracking. And if its weight distribution wasn't perfect, the ship risked literally breaking its keel. In naval terms, this is the equivalent of snapping its own spine. The second problem was fuel. At full speed, the H-44 would have burned so much fuel that it would have consumed Germany's entire daily oil production just for one ship. A single voyage across the Atlantic would have required more fuel than the entire Kriegsmarine used in months. But Germany had a third, even bigger problem: geography. Germany's ports weren't designed to handle a behemoth this size. The H-44 couldn't fit through the Kiel Canal. It couldn't be built in Hamburg because it would exceed dry dock capacity. And even if it could be constructed, getting it out to sea without British aircraft noticing would be impossible. The ship would have been a floating target, visible from miles away, unable to hide, unable to maneuver, and too precious to risk. By early 1941, German engineers quietly acknowledged the truth. The super battleship was a fantasy.
Not only was it impossible to build, it was strategically suicidal. In an age of aircraft carriers, submarines, and precision bombing, giant battleships were already obsolete. The Bismarck itself delivered the final proof. Just days after sinking HMS Hood, it was disabled by a single torpedo dropped from a tiny British biplane. A vessel 10 times the size of Bismarck would have been even easier to spot and just as vulnerable from the air. But Hitler loved giant weapons. His obsession with bigger equals better pushed his designers to keep working on the H-Class long after it stopped making sense. The engineers were trapped. They didn't dare say no directly, not to a dictator who killed people for disagreeing with them. So instead, they buried the ship in paperwork.
They made it heavier, more expensive, more complicated, more unrealistic. They essentially made the ship so gigantic, so mechanically impossible, that eventually the design collapsed under its own absurdity. This was their quiet rebellion, killing the super battleship by making it too big for its own good. Ironically, the H-Class wasn't canceled because the Allies destroyed the plans. It was canceled because the Kriegsmarine itself realized the ship would endanger Germany more than it would help it. The terrifying truth is this: if the H-44 had actually been built, Germany might have lost the war even faster. The resources required for one ship, millions of tons of steel, thousands of workers, and years of labor would have crippled the already strained German war economy. In the end, the H-class battleships never left the blueprint stage. Their hull sections were scrapped, their steel was melted down for U-boats, and their giant guns were never forged. Hitler's dream of a super battleship fleet ended before a single keel was laid. But the legacy of the H-class endures. Their blueprints tell a powerful story. The story of a regime so blinded by fantasy, so obsessed with spectacle, that it tried to build ships larger than physics itself would allow. And in doing so, they revealed the fundamental weakness of Nazi Germany, a belief that intimidation mattered more than practicality, and that engineering could be willed into existence by sheer ideology. The H-44 never fired a single shot. It never sailed. It never even floated. But its absurd size, its impossible structure, and the fear it caused among its own designers stand as a testament to one of history's most extreme experiments in warship design. A mega project so massive it could have sunk itself before the enemy even arrived.